I used to think the worst sound in a home was a slammed door. I don't think that anymore. The worst sound is quieter. It's the soft click of a calendar invite, one that wasn't meant for you to see. My name is Leah. I'm 32. I live in Seattle, Washington, near Green Lake, in a one-bedroom apartment that pretends it's bigger when the windows fog. I'm a civil transportation planner for the city. My days are lines, lanes, crossings, and arguments that are really about fear. I count seconds at intersections so strangers can get home safe. At home, I forgot that timing matters there too. That attention is the crossing that keeps people from getting hurt. My partner Noah, 34, manages a specialty outdoor store downtown. He can talk about boots like a sommelier talks about Pinot. Heel drop, rock plate, lug pattern. The first time we talked, he made me laugh in the rain. He said the right shoe changes the way you feel your own body. I told him the right bus lane changes the way a whole neighborhood breathes. We liked that about each other. Small details, big outcomes. Together 5 years. Living together for 3. People called us easy, not dramatic, not dull. We did Sunday pho, Tuesday laundry, and Friday try a new IPA and admit we don't like it. We shared a password manager and a fondness for weather apps. We knew each other's coffee orders and shoe sizes and the exact sound our freezer makes when it pretends it's not old. I used to say the best part of us was how little we had to try. I mistook that for strength. It was just ease. Ease gets fragile when pressure shows up. It started with training seasons. Seattle running culture believes rain is character, not weather. Noah volunteered to coach a local 10K group, Saturdays long, Wednesdays drills. He came home soaped and buzzing, the good kind. He broke down cadence like a language and tempo like a mood. He said things like, glutes before quads, with a reverence that made me smile. Then one name kept returning. Tess. Tess crushed her tempo today. Tess noticed my cueing and said it finally clicked. Tess brought cocoa for the group because it was gross out. At first, I liked her without knowing her. I liked how Noah sounded when he said her name, energized, useful, seen as a good coach. I wanted that life to stay uncomplicated, so I did the thing that felt like kindness and was really neglect. I told myself silence was the same thing as support. Work got heavier. Public workshops. A corridor redesign with 23 businesses, each with a different definition of impact. I started saying later more than yes. We'll run later. We'll talk later. We'll be us later. Later is a cul-de-sac. You circle it until you forget you meant to turn out. Noah stayed after practice to stack cones and answer DMs for the club. Wednesday became Wednesday plus coffee. Saturday became Saturday plus debrief. He moved from the group to we without hearing it. I tell people the first red flag was laughing at a phone. Not a huge laugh, a bite-your-lip smile meant for one person. The second red flag was a race bib drying on our towel rack that didn't belong to either of us. Whose bib is that? I asked. Oh, he said. Tess washed hers by accident. I said I'd hang it. He said it like neighbors swapping sugar. My chest got tight the way air does before it rains. The third wasn't a thing. It was a drift. I'd start talking about a public meeting where a man yelled at me about a bus lane like it stole his childhood, and Noah would tilt his head listening, kind, and then I'd watch his attention slide to somewhere behind his eyes. It wasn't cruelty, just absence. That's when I made my emotionally wrong decision. I tried to smooth the road instead of fix the route. I took on more chores. I planned a ski weekend. I booked a dinner we couldn't afford to reconnect. I thought ease leads to closeness. Ease without presence is just a padded wall, no pain, no progress. Discovery arrived like my job by calendar. I was prepping slides for a council briefing when a shared calendar popped up on my laptop. It wasn't mine, but it used my work Gmail as a recovery email leftovers. From that weekend, I helped Noah untangle his phone. Event title, Cool Down plus Coca, 7:15 guests, Noah, Tess, repeats, Wednesdays. Location, not the track. A small park across Lake Union, the kind with one bench and no lights. I stared at the screen and felt a planner's fury at violations. Mislabeled destination, hidden routes. A desire path worn where a sidewalk should be. Then I closed my laptop, put on my city face, and talked about signal timing like my personal life wasn't blinking red. I didn't confront him that night. He came home wet and happy, smelling like cold air and sugar. He hugged me while scrolling. We watched a show about a messy breakup so we could feel clean. On Friday, I took a personal day I pretended was for rest. I ran the Green Lake Loop alone. It drizzled. A heron stood in the reeds like a gray question mark. I sat on a damp bench afterwards and told myself the line I use at work when a corridor is confusing: pay attention before you redesign. Saturday's long run ended at Gasworks Park. I brought bagels for the group because generosity can be reconnaissance if you don't weaponize it. Tess found me. She had runner's shoulders, a crooked front tooth, and the ease of a person who doesn't audition to be liked. "You're Leah," she said. "He talks like you can fix a city with a pencil." It was a sweet line. It lodged like a splinter. I watched from small distances. In crowds, attention is a vector. Noah's always pointed toward her. Not lust. Alignment. Bodies angled closer. Jokes finished by the wrong person. A rhythm I wasn't part of. Later, my mom called about a cousin's engagement. She asked how Noah and I were. I said good, and changed the subject to rainfall totals. Weather is a great way to avoid intimacy in Seattle. We can talk rain for hours. That night, Noah showered and hummed a song I didn't know. He pulled on the sweatshirt he knows I like, and leaned into me on the couch. I felt generous and terrified at once. "Want to run together tomorrow?" I asked. He scratched his neck and said he had to meet a runner who's catching up. He blinked afterwards, the small flinch of someone who hears his own lie. I didn't argue. I went to bed early. I fell asleep to the click of his phone beside mine. 2 small metronomes out of sync. My work mind counts steps to crossings, so I counted to Wednesday. I left early, cut across the Vermont Bridge, and walked to that dark little park. I brought a thermos because props are courage. I wore a hood and stood far enough back to be anonymous and close enough to hear. They arrived laughing, the easy post-effort kind. He carried Coco. She carried a blanket like a joke. No one sits on wet grass here. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. They talked like 2 people who trust the room to hold them. One line did it. Noah said, "When you said your dad only watches the finish, I realized I do that to Leah's show up at accomplishments and miss the hard middle." Tess said, "That's the part that makes the finish mean anything." He nodded like someone finding their reflection. I felt heat in my chest, not jealousy. Recognition. He wasn't mocking me. He was seeing me somewhere else. Love, misdelivered. I backed away, walked to the water, and watched a single sculler drag silver lines through black. I wanted anger that would carry me home like a tailwind. I got clarity instead. Clarity is colder. It gets you there without letting you burn. At home, I set the thermos on the counter and stared at our magnets, trail maps, a postcard of Pike Place, a crooked photo of us under a rainbow that belonged to somebody's hose. When he came in, he touched my shoulder. "Run go okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. He reached for the cocoa powder and I thought, "You already shared that cup." I waited 2 days. Not to gather more evidence, to pick words that wouldn't make me small. Friday night, ramen bowls. Rain against the window. "I know about Wednesdays," I said. He didn't pretend not to. He didn't ask, "What do you mean?" He set down his chopsticks and said, "Okay. Is it physical?" I asked. "No," he said like a small point of pride. It told me the truth I needed. The boundary he was proud of wasn't the one I needed kept. "What is it then?" I asked. "It feels like being seen in the parts I didn't know how to say." He looked scared and relieved at once. "By her," I said. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "Do you want to be with me?" I asked. He swallowed. "I do," he said. Then, softer, "I don't know how to stop wanting that connection." The word that did more damage than connection. I nodded. "Then I can't be your person," I said. It came out steady, like a lane closure notice firm, factual, unavoidable. He started to cry. No theatrics. Just quiet tears for something we built and didn't maintain. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know," I said. "I'm sorry we treated easy like it could maintain itself. We made lists, rent, utilities, storage. He'd take the couch this week and move to a coworker's place after. We'd split plants like diplomatic gardeners. The money for our Patagonia trip would become 2 security deposits. We did the math of grief. That night, I lay on the bed and listened to him wrestle the couch blanket, both of us pretending blankets fix cold. The radiator ticked. The city hummed. The water moved the way water always does forward. I didn't tell many people. Friends want villains. I didn't have one. I had 2 decent humans who drifted and a third who felt more like a mirror than a thief. At work, I asked for the night shift on a corridor repaint so I could hold a roller and make a line that meant something. Paint is honest. You can stand back and see where you've been. Days slid into a new shape. I bought a bike light that made me feel safe. I ran alone and relearned my pace. I called my sister before I forgot. I fixed a wobbly stool with wood glue and patience because permanence is practice. 2 weeks later, I opened the junk drawer and found a spare key to a future we weren't in anymore, that race bib in my head, still on the towel rack. I took it down for real. I held it. I laughed at myself for letting paper hold power. I threw it away. The past can exist without living in the present. I didn't block Noah. We texted logistics. He came by for boxes. He asked if I wanted the enamel camp mugs. Yes, I said. They were ours from a trip where we learned to put out a fire properly. Drown, stir, drown again. Breakups could take notes. A month passed. The 10K finished. A friend sent a finish line photo. Noah stood beside Tess, both clapping, medals around runners' necks. I didn't zoom in. I deleted it. Not from bitterness. From choosing where my eyes go. December iced the lake at the edges like a pie. I ran carefully. I counted breaths 4 in, 4 out until my head got quiet. At home, I cooked soup and leaned my back to the stove for steady heat. I bought tulips I didn't need and watched them open like a promise I made to myself. January brought small bravery. I booked a solo cabin on Whidbey Island. I packed a notebook, a map, and the ugly sweater my aunt swears is good luck. Fairies have a kindness machines that move you while you finally sit still. On the island, I walked the beach and watched driftwood refuse to pretend it wasn't a tree once. I wrote 3 things. 1. Presence is a skill. 2. Attention is a choice. 3. I want a life that keeps faith with both. Back in Seattle, I switched my route and joined a 6 a.m. run group. Because reinvention needs a time that used to be hard. I learned names. I learned coffee preferences. I learned the exact second dawn softens black into blue. In February, I saw Noah on the Burke-Gilman. He slowed. I slowed. We stood like 2 caution signs in reflective gear. How are you? He asked. Quieter. I said. Quieter. I said honester. Not a word, but true. He nodded. I'm sorry, he said. Inventory, not spell. I know, I said. Me too. I let later do a lot of the work. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We wished each other a good run and meant it. We moved on. Spring put moss on everything. The first day it didn't rain for 7 hours. The whole city smiled. I opened windows. I cleaned baseboards. I found the small ring box where I keep pins and bus tokens and felt the lightness of not bracing. One night, I walked past the track and stopped under the bleachers to watch the group. They argued over playlists. They spilled a water bottle and laughed like a relief valve. I saw Tess across the lanes happy. I saw Noah lighter. Something unclenched in me I didn't know I was still holding. A runner tripped on a cone and popped up grinning. Noah jogged over with a hand. Tess jogged too with a joke. I walked away before they could see me. I didn't need anything there. I had my own lanes to paint. You might think that's the end. It wasn't. Endings are rarely sudden. They're learned. A new project landed on my desk. A dangerous 5-way in a residential pocket where 4 schools meet bad habits. We did observational counts at peak hours. We mapped desire lines, where people actually go versus where we told them to go. We stood with clipboards and coffee and listened to neighbors insist we were ruining the neighborhood by making it safer. On the second morning, a little boy on a scooter missed the curb cut and tipped. His dad caught him mid-fall, laughing, relieved, still scared. Good catch, I said. The dad nodded and said something I wrote down later. He wants to go where he's going. We all do. That night I thought about desire lines, how people cut across grass because the designed path forgot who they are. Sometimes betrayal is that. The human desire line your current path refused to admit. Naming it doesn't excuse it, it explains the rut. I didn't let that make me cynical. I let it make me deliberate. I started checking my own desire lines. Where do I go when I stop pretending? What do I reach for without thinking? Some answers were small. I put my phone in a drawer when I cooked so I'd stop scrolling away my own attention. I moved a chair closer to the window because light helps. I put a hook near the door because coming home should feel easy. Some answers were bigger. I joined a Wednesday night city choir because I wanted a reason to keep the middle of the week for myself. I sang badly. I liked how singing made my ribs move. My therapist said grief needs a place to vibrate. Choir is a legal way to vibrate loudly. Around that time, my sister sent me a podcast about micro-betrayals, all the tiny choices that trade truth for convenience. I listened on a run and cried in public, which Seattle politely ignored. I made a list after, saying we're fine when we're not. Labeling later as a plan. Outsourcing the tender middle to someone outside your home. Calling ease love. Calling silence support. I taped it inside a cabinet where only I would see. A private building code. March turned to April. Cherry blossoms showed off and clogged drains. I learned the names of 3 crossing guards because credit matters. I ate lunch on a curb with my colleague Maya and told her the whole story because telling it to one person felt like putting the couch where it belongs. You didn't get small, she said. You got clear. Then she stole my pickle because real friends do both. A Saturday later, I decided to do something ceremonial and ordinary, replace the bath mat we bought together. I went to Fred Meyer and stood in the aisle where beige goes to multiply. An older woman beside me said, I always pick the wrong size. Same, I said. We laughed at ourselves for not being good at rectangles. I chose a blue one with a rubber backing that actually grips. At home, I laid it down and felt an absurd surge of pride. The smallest surfaces can tell you you're safe. In May, my run group planned a community 5K to raise money for safe routes to school. I volunteered to do route design because I am myself, even when I'm pretending not to be. We staked corners and measured sight distances and borrowed cones. On race morning, kids with face paint sprinted and then sprinted again because pacing is a learned art. A little girl in shiny shoes asked if she could hold my stopwatch for luck. She did. She beat her dad by a step. She screamed like joy was a siren. That sound healed something old. After the race, I found a shady spot and stretched. A man sat down near me with a paper plate of orange slices and said, Yulia? Yes, I said, bracing for a complaint. My sister's in the planning meeting you ran last month, he said. She said you listened even when she was mad. I thanked him and stared at my shoes until I didn't cry. Listening without agreement is a relationship superpower. I wish we'd learned it earlier at home. By early summer, the apartment felt like mine. The kitchen had my habits. The living room had my chair near the window. The bedroom had my nightstand with a book and lotion and not much else. I kept one of Noah's mugs because it's enamel and perfect for the porch. Memory without custody. One Sunday, I ran into Tess, not at the track, not near the store, at a farmer's market, buying strawberries that would stain our fingers the rest of the day. She saw me before I saw her. She didn't look guilty. She looked careful. Hi, Leah, she said. Hi, I said. We stood there with fruit between us like a test we hadn't studied for. I'm sorry for the part I played, she said. No defense, no but. Thank you, I said. I hope you're okay. I am, I said. It was true. We nodded once, like citizens ending a civil conversation, and went on with our mornings. That night, it rained in clean sheets, and I opened the window because my apartment likes to breathe. I made tea and put the new bath mat to work. I wrote a line in my notebook. I forgive, not to cancel debt, but to close the account. A week later, our office got a thank you email from a woman whose kid had stopped biking to school after a near miss. She wrote that the new crossing had given him back his courage. I printed the email and taped it inside the project folder. Some wins must be on paper. You want to know if I dated? The answer is, slowly. I downloaded an app because my friend staged an intervention with cheese. I scrolled people with dogs and people with fish. I met a guy who monologued about soil pH for 30 minutes like a TED Talk no one funded. I met a barista who asked 3 good questions and then moved to Portland mid-conversation because of course. Then on a Wednesday at Grand Central Bakery, I met Jonah. We reached for the same last cardamom bun and did the polite you take it dance until the cashier said, there's more in 5 minutes, like a parent breaking up kids gently. Jonah is an elementary art teacher who speaks about second graders like they're tiny geniuses with glue. He asked, on our second date, how do you like to be paid attention to? I said, in the middle, not just the finish. He typed into his phone like it was a recipe and later asked if porch light connection made sense steady, not dramatic, always on. It did. We're not perfect. He loses track of time because glitter exists. I shut down after hearings where a man calls me a tyrant for painting a bike lane, but we do something I didn't know to ask for before. We name drift early. We check calendars together and leave Wednesdays for us, even if us is reading on opposite ends of the couch with our feet touching. We practice the middle. Around then, I saw Noah again, this time at REI, because Seattle is a small town wearing a Patagonia jacket. He rang up a camping stove for a couple debating fuel types like religion. He looked up. We both smiled the way you do at people who used to know your grocery list. On my way out, he caught me near the bikes. "How's the five-way?" he asked, like he still reads city memos. "Safer," I said. "You look lighter," he said. "So do you," I said. We stood in politeness and history. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I am," I said. "Me too," he said. We nodded and let the automatic doors take the moment away. You might be waiting for the big lesson. It isn't big. It's small, so small you can miss it until you trip. Cheating can look like alignment, not lips. Betrayal is often a practice before it's an event, small, undelivered truths sent to the wrong address. Identity shifts aren't punishments. They're reconstructive. I used to think love was the absence of friction. Now I think love is the skill of turning toward, especially when friction says, turn away. The middle counts more than the finish. I learned other small things, to label containers so I don't yell at future me. To buy flowers on Thursdays because that's when the week forgets it's allowed to be pretty. To keep an umbrella by the door and use it, even in Seattle, because martyrdom to weather impresses no one. One evening in late summer, I sat on the Green Lake dock and listened to teenagers dare each other into the water. Seattle light does a trick, then turns everything gold without asking permission. I held my phone and typed a message I didn't send to anyone. I am here, not an apology, not a plea, a presence. In the fall, my choir did a community concert in a church that smells like lemon oil and story. We sang half a beat slow and no one minded. Jonah came and sat in the back and grinned like a proud kid. After, he handed me a napkin with a doodled street map on it. He'd drawn a little icon where our apartment is and wrote, "Home equals safest crossing." Corny, effective. I put it on my fridge with the magnet from Pike Place. Sometime after that, I ran the loop and saw a group doing track drills on the grass. For a second, my chest clenched. Then it didn't. I waved at nobody in particular and kept going. The path was mine even when other feet used it. A year from the first calendar click, I stood at my window and watched rain turn a streetlight into a blurry halo. Seattle makes saints of ordinary fixtures. I pressed my palm to the glass and said the quiet vow I promised myself. Attention is how I love, and I will not outsource it again. If you're where I was, if your chest knows and your mouth hasn't, pick a night with soup and rain and tell the truth. You don't need a villain, you need a boundary that brings you back to yourself. I used to think the worst sound was a slammed door. It isn't. It's a calendar click that reveals the life you're not living. The best sound is quieter, keys in your own hand, a kettle on, your feet crossing your apartment to meet yourself in the middle, not just at the finish. I am Leah. I paint lines for a living. I finally painted one in my home, and I crossed it toward myself.